Hello, Bozeman. We are the Vegans of Bozeman, and you are listening to KGVM Bozeman. We are a community group committed to environmentalism, human health, and redefining our relationship with other animals. We hope through this podcast to inspire you to become vegan for those same reasons. I'm Lenny.
I'm Lucy.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Sarah. Hi, everybody. I'm excited for today's topic. I think this will be a fun, more lighthearted topic. Our last few shows have been fairly heavy, fairly dense, talking about animal ethics and environmentalism and all those kinds of things. But I think today is just more of a lighthearted, fun, but also very practical topic. And it's all, to sum it up, I would say, it's all to answer the question, what do we eat? I know we get that question a lot, and it makes sense. To be honest, the first time I ever met a vegan, I was in high school. She was a foreign exchange student from Australia, and she gave an expository speech in English class about veganism, and it was very well done, very convincing. But of course, it was the first time I had ever been exposed to this idea, and I remember a group of us surrounded her in the hallway outside the cafeteria. We're like, what do you eat? And she just kind of opened up her lunch and she was like, well, I have some marmalade sandwich and whatever.
Marmite?
Yeah.
Whatever.
So, and yeah, I remember, anytime somebody hosts you as a vegan, and you have to say, well, I'd love to come.
Right.
Thank you so much for inviting me, but I should let you know that I'm a vegan. And so inevitably they're going to say, what do you eat?
Right.
So I think that speaks a lot to, once again, culture, right? Everything seems to come back to culture when it comes to veganism and becoming a vegan. When most of us think about putting a meal together, when a non-vegan, I should say, thinks about putting a meal together, it seems like it starts with the centerpiece of the meal, which is almost always meat, like the turkey, the ham, the roast beef, the hamburgers, whatever. Like the main thing is meat. And then everything surrounding the main thing is full of eggs or dairy. And so, I remember when I was making the transition, it was comparatively easy for me to become vegetarian. But I remember when I was thinking about becoming a vegan, I remember saying, like, I feel like I'm having to learn how to cook from scratch, like all over again. Like I'm starting at square one again, just because it is challenging. So we do sympathize.
Also, I really relate to this last point about like when you go vegan, it feels like such a much more overwhelming change. To me, it really felt like this. When I went vegetarian, it was like no big deal. And when I wanted to go vegan, I was a teen, so I was crazy, I guess. But like, it was such a big deal. Like, if you're not gonna get dairy and eggs, you're gonna die. Kind of thing, Right. So it feels like a big deal for a lot of people. And then when you're actually kind of in the hang of it after like 2 weeks or something, it becomes your new normal, and it's not really that big a deal, obviously, after that. It's really about habit.
Right.
I might say, don't worry if it takes a little longer than 2 weeks to make that transition. In a perfect world, we could make these life changes overnight. You read one book or you have one conversation.
Some people do, yeah.
Yeah, which is absolutely admirable. But I think for most of us, to be realistic, especially if you are not just cooking for yourself, but a whole family, children, a husband or a spouse or whatever, I think that it needs to probably be, or it's just reality dictates that it's probably going to be a little bit more gradual, implementing it little by little. Because it is a major paradigm shift. So
it is becoming easier, though. I'll say that. I remember in the 90s, I went vegan for maybe a year, and I was in the military, and I was on two different remote islands that were run by the military, and therefore there wasn't really a lot of commercial shopping options. And so it was very difficult. And that was what, almost 25 some years ago. And now it's just so much easier to be a vegan just with the options that are available, which we'll get into. But
I just want to mention as well that I think it's important to remember as well that for as long as we do consume these products and buy them, we're still like part of the demand, right? And so it is still important that we're not like beating ourselves up, obviously, over changes and how hard it can be for us, but reminding ourselves of why we're doing it and how there are actual victims involved and that there are individual lives on the other end of that, I think is crucial as well.
right,
It's definitely very motivating.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like when you're in the store making your choices and you remember the victims that you're paying somebody to exploit. It's definitely it's helpful to keep your priorities straight and rethink what you're going to buy.
And that just brings up a thing. We have a new Whole Foods that just opened up in Bozeman, and a lot of great vegan options there, many which we'll get into. But I was in there last Friday, and I think we experienced this, and Sarah and I talk about this often. You go in and you go past the meat counter, whether
Still
or not.
haven't gone.
Okay, well, not Whole Foods, but any store, and it's like there's a strong smell from like fish and meat, and I guess not say we're sensitive to it, but you smell it. But there was an overwhelming smell in Whole Foods of fish and meat. I mean, throughout a good portion of the store, and I was just kind of like, what's going on? So I think I don't know how other like non-vegans would experience that, but I know for me, it seems overwhelming, like that smell. So anyway, one of the downsides, I suppose, of it causes you to wonder about how fresh the animal products are in these stores when the smell is overwhelming. Anyway, we'll get on to.
Well, I mean, at the time of us recording this show, tomorrow is a pretty major holiday, and so holidays can be especially rife with stress when you're trying to get together with a family who doesn't understand why in the world you would want to eat vegan. And people are culture, we talk about culture I think in every episode so far, but culture is definitely even more magnified when it comes to like the major holidays. Like people want their traditional holiday meal, and when you take that away from them, they feel very upset. Like well, what's your main dish? What's your main dish? And even that concept of a main dish and side dishes, I'm realizing that's just built around standard diet paradigm that, again, the meat is in the center and then everything else around is just a side dish. When you become vegan, I think more and more that paradigm breaks down, that everything is part of the meal equally.
But you can also veganize pretty much everything
Right.
now.
Right.
So you can actually have that as well and just veganize it, but still being careful about like how healthy your meals are, right?
Yes. Yeah, so let's get into it. I think maybe we'll start with how do you think about shopping when you're running out of food and you're getting ready to go to the grocery store as a vegan or someone trying to transition into veganism? So let's talk about where we shop and maybe what's good to have on hand in a vegan pantry. But before we dive into that, I think there's some concerns that people, we need to address when you think about shopping. And maybe the first one is, isn't it expensive to shop as a vegan? I think there's that perception out there that switching over to a vegan diet is going to end up costing more at the grocery store. So...
Yeah, why is that?
I think a lot of that perception exists because a lot of these meat alternatives that we're seeing pop up, like Beyond Impossible burgers and things like that, they're great. They taste really good, and they avoid most of the issues associated, especially the ethical ones, with animal products. But they're very expensive. So if the only thing you're eating is Impossible Burgers, yes, it's probably going to be as expensive as if the only thing you ate was grass-fed, 97% lean hamburgers.
Right.
But that's not the only thing you can eat on a vegan diet. I eat a lot of vegetables and legumes, beans, grains, and it works pretty well. My diet is pretty low cost. Putting it into a more global perspective, there was a recent study that was published by, this was the Lancet Planet Health in that journal. I think it talked about for upper middle income and high income countries, which is all of the countries and what we think of as the global West, vegan diets were on average, I think it was 30 to 40%. 30% less expensive than benchmark diets, the average American diet.
So it's actually, you're saying they found that eating vegan is 30% cheaper.
Yeah.
Correct.
Wow.
Which is a lot, actually.
Right.
That's
I mean,
that's
great
no
news.
small thing, right? And I mean, I love that you brought up, you know, like if all you're going to eat is something like, you know, Impossible or Beyond products, your grocery bill probably is going to look a lot more expensive.
Oh, I just want to mention real quick that in this study, they actually there was like tofu, for example, products in it. So it wasn't like a whole foods diet completely. There were also like products like tofu seitan and stuff like this. Of course, you still have to look out for it not being too expensive with these kinds of products. But they did include it in it, which is really nice.
Right.
So yeah, when you go to the grocery store, you're going to find that there's plenty of, you know, pretty processed vegan products. And, you know, we eat those.
Yeah.
You know, we both work, you know, full time. You know, there's plenty of evenings where we don't make our meal completely from scratch. And it's nice to have something to pull out of the freezer and, you know, simple meal. And they taste great.
Tastes awesome.
But we know that those aren't necessarily the healthiest vegan, you know, it's not building the healthiest vegan diet to eat that all the time. So we definitely want to acknowledge that it's possible to be a vegan who eats a lot of junk food. And I think that's important to mention because
Well, also, I think it's been a lot of especially on social media, you can hear a lot about ex-vegans. And a lot of the time, you know, they kind of explain most of the time it's for health reasons. And they mention that they basically say that they stopped being vegan because they couldn't make it work and be healthy on a vegan diet. But often they don't necessarily say the cause. They don't really, they're not necessarily sure about the cause. And they often are a little confused about how there's a lot of different types of vegan diets. You can just eat potatoes and drink Coke, and that's a vegan diet. And you can be on a whole foods diet, which is the healthiest vegan diet, obviously, and it working very well for you. And of course, there are people with more sensitivities to fiber, so you have to kind of see if you have these kinds of issues and work around that, of course. But yeah, I think it's just fair to remember that it's not because it didn't work for someone on a vegan diet that it was because of the fact that it was a vegan diet. Maybe it was because it was the wrong diet that happened to be vegan. You know what I mean? Because you can be unhealthy on an omnivore.
Oh yeah,
diet,
for sure.
So.
No, yeah. Yep. I think even the vegan doctors, the plant-based doctors will tell you if you eat too much, they don't necessarily endorse the processed vegan foods either. I mean, for them, they always speak of whole foods and even the oils. Like we talked about saturated animal fat, but I know several of them, Dr. Esselton, Dr. Neil Barnard, they'll talk about just oils, olive oil even. Like if you consume too much of that, it can have a similar effect too.
I mean, vegan junk food is junk food, right? Nothing surprising about that.
Right.
Yeah.
One resource that I use a lot in terms of health is the USDA's DRI calculator, daily recommended intake, and it's just general information. You can base it on sex, age, whether you're pregnant, height, weight, activity level, takes those into account, and then gives you recommendations for how many calories, how much protein, carbohydrates, fiber, stuff like that. And it's really nice just to get an idea of how much of what foods or what nutrient targets you should try to be hitting each day.
And also a chronometer.
Yeah, Chronometer, that's an app that basically it accesses a lot of different databases where different food, it has information on the nutrition of different foods, like what are the different vitamins and minerals in an apple, how many calories are in an apple, and stuff like that. So every couple of weeks, I'll just take a day where I record everything I eat on this app Chronometer to make sure that there aren't any big gaps in my diet, and there usually aren't. So
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's pretty easy actually once you're in the hang of it to meet the requirements. And I just wanted to mention real quick, like for people who are kind of skeptical about whether you can be vegan and healthy, it will be helpful to actually let you know about the stance of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is it's one of the biggest groups of nutritionists in the world. And in 2016, they renewed their stance about vegetarian and vegan diets, and they said that vegan diets, well-planned vegan diets, that is, are suitable for all ages and also for athletes, and it includes obviously pregnancy. So that's really cool to know.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, as long as we're talking about checklists, I mean, one of my favorites is the Daily Dozen from Dr. Greger. He runs nutritionfacts.org, and all he really does is he looks at nutritional studies all day, and he double-blind studies, all kinds of peer-reviewed studies, and then he just kind of pulls out the essence for the layman. And he has all kinds of videos. If you go to nutritionfacts.org, but he has this thing called the Daily Dozen, and the essence of it is it's the best nutritional or nutrition-dense foods you can eat for a human. And they include things like beans and berries and fruits and cruciferous vegetables and other vegetables and flaxseed, nuts, herbs and spices, whole grains, water, and exercise. So the idea being you should try to get these in your diet daily as a minimum. And there's actually an app for it. You can track your progress daily.
Yeah, I love that app.
Yeah. But anyway, it's just something else to keep in mind. Like again, the highest nutrition density, what's the word? Nutrition dense foods you can eat, and one being, what is it? Kale, right? Kale is like one of the most nutritious things you can eat on the planet, apparently. So.
Also, a lot of people have a concern about protein. It's actually, I mean, I do outreach, and this is the one that comes up every single time, which is quite surprising for me, actually, because I didn't really used to worry about that too much before I went vegan. That's not the thing I was worried about.
Right.
And most people really believe that it's impossible to to get all your protein requirements on a vegan diet for some reason. And it might be helpful to actually mention this study. I have to see. Oh yeah, it was from the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics that we just mentioned, and they basically said that vegans vegans and also non-vegans tend to get 70% more protein than they need out of their diet. Right. So really, there's not much. You don't have to worry too much about protein, and it's very interesting when you actually research all this stuff, because the things that are really important in diet that most people don't get enough of, like fiber. 95% of Americans don't meet their requirements for fiber. They really are. It's a really big deal that you don't meet your requirement for fiber. It leads to a lot of health issues. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's funny too. I think we talked about it earlier. And that is that many doctors, some plant-based doctors like Garth Davis and Milton Mills, have said no one's ever come into their medical office or clinic suffering from protein deficiency. So it seems like so many people, especially when you start talking about veganism, are worried about protein, but then it's not something that the medical community sees.
Yeah, what you keep hearing from doctors, like Dr. Greger mentioned that a bunch, that you actually only have to really worry about protein if you're not eating enough calories, like people who are anorexic or don't have access to enough food, for
Right.
example.
Right.
If that's not the case, you don't necessarily need to worry too much about it.
Yeah.
So if you're still a little confused about where your protein will come from when you switch over to veganism, just let me give you a quick list. Make sure to be eating nuts and seeds, legumes, soy products and vegan meats, grains, and then fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables like broccoli, sweet potato, artichoke, spinach, and fruits like bananas, blackberries, and guava. And then non-dairy milk also will have plenty of protein.
Right. And within grains, like is quinoa, is that a grain?
I think so.
Yeah. And so that is a high protein plant food, as well as hemp. Apparently, hemp seeds are very
Also,
high
I
in
think we
protein.
kind of forgot to think about the B12 thing. Is that a lot of people wonder about that one?
Right.
I think we should mention it quickly. As a vegan, it's very important that you get a B12 supplement, but it's also just as important if you're not vegan.
Right.
Animals actually get supplemented in B12 because B12 is a bacteria that you find in the soil. The problem is that with what we've done to our soil, we don't actually have enough B12 to get for ourselves. Like in the past, people, like, for example, if you were a vegan back then, centuries ago, I guess, like, I'm saying that because in India, there's a community that's been vegan for like centuries. They actually, and they're still living that way. And people, scientists have been like, okay, how do you get your B12? And they figured out that it's because they don't wash their veggies with soap or anything like that. So the bacteria in their soil is still there. And so they don't have to supplement. And actually, there's a plant that's been discovered to have enough B12 in it, which is interesting. Anyways, so non-vegans get their B12 through animals that get supplemented in B12. And so there's obviously a problem, health issues that come with eating animals.
Yeah.
But so just a B12 supplement is pretty important.
Well, no, nutritional yeast, right? Is that?
It does. It does have B12.
Yeah.
And
There's different kinds as well of
Right.
B12. So.
I wonder if we could just go outside and eat a tablespoon of dirt every day.
I wonder.
Well,
Actually, you
yeah,
won't
but is
have
there
to wonder
enough
because I've
B12
been
in
doing
the
that for the
soil?
last 3 years.
Who has?
I'm kidding. I haven't.
You look really healthy. I was wondering what it was. You have a glow about you. Eat a tablespoon of dirt
We
every
should
day.
change this to eat a tablespoon of dirt every day podcast. I think
You
that
really
would,
don't prefer supplement to dirt? Like what?
Why pay so much for supplements when you could just go out and eat a tablespoon of dirt?
It's interesting how people tend to be supplement averse when you talk about this, but they don't necessarily get averse to it when it's not about veganism, because most of the people who get supplements are non-vegan because vegans are such a tiny percentage of the population, right? And there's nothing really wrong with supplements. Like we don't live a natural way. We have computers and stuff. So what really is the problem? And we could get B12 in this plant that I mentioned that I don't exactly know the name of, or like, if you really dig in the ground, but
Just don't wash your vegetables. If you have a garden, just pull them out and.
yeah, but is there enough
Be safe.
B12 in
Don't-
the soil? That's the problem.
don't eat dirt. I want to be clear about that. But
We're
yeah,
not recommending that. Yeah.
the thing that I do for things like that is I just take a daily multivitamin.
Oh.
I know a lot of people who aren't vegan that do that.
Yeah.
The one thing to consider is if you're on any prescription medications, you would want to talk to your doctor before you do that.
But I mean, like plant milks are always fortified with B12, and you can get vegan protein powder, which so then for sure you're getting all the protein you need, and it has B12.
And protein is not that hard to get,
Right.
though.
Right.
One other thing we wanted to mention when you're switching from a standard diet to a vegan diet is, there is such a thing as your gut biome, the flora within your digestive system that handles whatever you're giving it. And so your gut biome changes based on what you eat. And so if you've been eating a standard diet, and if you radically, in one day completely change what you eat, you may experience, or you'll will likely experience some digestive distress. Like, you know, if you never eat beans and legumes and then you suddenly start eating like several cups of beans a day, yes, you're probably going to have some digestive distress because your gut biome is not equipped to digest that. So please don't become alarmed if while you're making a major change to your diet, you experience some of that.
Well, I think some people give up.
Yes.
They try it. They have bloating and or they're gassy or whatever because that the gut biome is adjusting, and they give up because it's just too rough. So there might be some supplements you could take while you're in transition, but I also think that I forgot my point.
Well, I think just that, you know, go gradual,
Right.
like, you know, introduce new foods gradually, and
It takes about 2 weeks.
yeah, within a
and
few
remember the long-term benefits as well.
Right.
weeks. Right. So
Yeah, and that's a whole nother topic about the gut biome, and we're not doctors, and so we can't. But we just know it's roughly, listening to experts say it takes about 2 weeks for the bacteria in your gut to change, the probiotic.
like we know an individual who's like, oh, I cannot eat greens. She literally says, I cannot eat greens. And we're like, maybe just try a bite a day and then maybe
Right.
you know, like gradually bring it back into your diet, and you know, you will begin to be able to digest greens.
And I think that's what I was going to say too. Is that sometimes cooking things, like if you're eating things raw, might be a little harder. If you cook it, it helps. It helps reduce some of that pain.
And some people are more sensitive to fiber. I'm not sure how much of the population that is, but if you do have really like digestive distress that's for a long time, you know, sustained, like maybe you do need to eat less fiber. And I mean, there's a bunch of vegans out there, for example, that are known on social media or whatever, who have like Crohn's disease or IBS, or they even have just a sensitivity to fiber, and they're vegan and they figured it out, and they make sure that they don't eat too much fiber, or, you know,
Right.
it's totally possible.
Absolutely.
So how do we feel like we've covered the shopping, or should we talk about where we shop?
Yeah, where we shop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
in Bozeman. This is
Yeah.
Vegans of Bozeman, by the way, you're listening to on KGVM Bozeman. And we're going to talk about the favorite places that we shop for vegan food.
My go-to store is always Winco. I love their bulk section. It has so many incredible foods there. Like a lot of my diet consists of like staple grains, things like rice. And at Winco, I've found a lot of other interesting substitutes that I can use for rice in my diet, like buckwheat. I've really enjoyed eating buckwheat recently.
Wow.
And there's a lot of these dried foods like textured vegetable protein, which is an extruded soy product, and a lot of other beans and legumes that are extremely cheap in their bulk section.
Right.
And they also have pretty reasonably priced coffee there, which I enjoy.
Yeah. I've noticed coffee is getting expensive these days. I don't know what's going on. Like all over, kind of. So, yeah, good. Winco is great. It's very, even the produce is very economical, and it's fresh, and a lot of times it's really good. It's awesome, actually. And it's close to where we live. So, but yeah.
I shop at Walmart. Yeah, I'm actually transitioning to shopping at the co-op way more. I get my produce from the co-op downtown because I can walk there. In the winter, we tend to get delivered from Walmart, but I'm trying to just go to the co-op because of the bulk section, and I don't have a car, so that's why. Anyways, co-op is great. I don't really notice it being too expensive for us. But we tend to buy rice in bulks, which is really helpful as well. Yeah, I also, like Lenny, I actually eat a lot of legumes, rice, like healthy foods like that are great in curries, etc. I also actually buy a bunch of tofu sausages, stuff like this. They are delicious. Or like frozen, simple chicken. I mean, obviously vegan chicken. Yeah, they're really cool.
Yeah.
And almond milk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is Kevin. I tend to shop mostly, I guess, at Rosar's in the Huckleberries area, Huckleberry section of Rosar's. I'm there a lot. And I mean, Whole Foods just opened up. I've gone there a few times, but it's interesting, you can find a lot of products, and it's always interesting to me if every once in a while I pop into Smith's or pop into what's the one by the UPS store shop. What is the
I have no idea.
right in the corner of 19th and
Safeway?
Safeway. I always forget the name of that. Sometimes you go into Safeway, and it's interesting to me whenever I pop into a different store, the different vegan products I find. Like I'm used to Rosars and the things and every once in a while they have many new vegan products, but I always sometimes go into other stores and I'm like, oh, and I try that, or Town and Country, and I'll try that. And I'm like, oh, look at that. I'm going to try that. And I'll just, because it's a brand I know, but it's a product of that brand I've never tried, and I'll just grab it. And I just find it interesting that the vegan options around town they vary based on which store you're in. But Huckleberries is great. And I get some products there like Just Egg. I get there. So many other things that.
You should probably explain what Just Egg is.
Oh, Just Egg is like an alternative egg product that there's like a liquid, but there's one that's wrapped that you can put. You can heat it up and you can throw it in a sandwich. And strangely, I make these sandwiches for my coworkers. These vegan breakfast sandwiches. And after I make them, people try them and they don't realize, they're like, wow, it's hard to believe that's vegan. Some people say, oh yeah, it's not, doesn't taste like a regular breakfast sandwich, but they eventually, people who like them want to know where I get all the product. And I tell them Huckleberries, and then I'll go to Huckleberries and I can't get it. It's like, I'm like, I'm going to stop. But here I am on a radio show. I'm telling everybody, if you want to get all the product, it's at Huckleberries. So that's where I usually go. But
Yes. Yeah, when we first moved to Bozeman, I worked at Rosars. And so, that was like our first grocery store. And so I think that it ends up being our go-to grocery store. But we also use Costco. And of course, at Costco, you get a larger quantity for pretty economically. And that goes for, their fruits and vegetables, their rice and beans. They have a large pack of, I think, maybe 50 of these tortilla we like. It's like to roll burritos in, but they're uncooked, and they're just like 3 ingredients, just like flour, water, and oil or something. So they're, they don't have all the other additives, and they're really tasty. They do have like a yakisoba, like a noodle. It's like a kind of an Asian noodle vegetable frozen thing that we get sometimes. And they do have Impossible burgers and Impossible chicken nuggets at a larger quantity, so they're not quite as pricey. Right. And they have like a 4-pack of tofu that I'll go for, and also like several cartons of plant milk, like in a box, like in a case.
And it just reminds me, I know when we talk about this, like people ask, what do you eat? I mean, the average person probably eats a lot of vegan food already. Yeah. It's just now we're using the term vegan, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, you have a salad and a lot of things, bread. I mean, there's so many things that, I mean, I know there's sometimes egg and bread and different things, but a lot of honey, and we can talk about honey. But I'm just saying that, it's not like it's this mysterious thing. A lot of people are already eating a lot of vegan food.
Yeah, for sure. But I think when you are intentionally vegan, then it almost becomes a fun adventure to try more produce that you've never tried before, or, more grains that you'd never,
more recipes.
Yeah. Like I saw somebody posted once on Instagram, like, when I was on the standard diet, I was eating primarily like three different animals, but now as a vegan, I eat like hundreds of different varieties of all these things, fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes. So it expands your horizons.
It does. And we joked at our last vegan potluck, which by the way happens at the Peace of Christ Community Church at 120 South Grand about once a month, but
in the basement.
We were joking because somebody was saying, "Oh, that's buckwheat. That's buckwheat. Those noodles are made out of buckwheat." And I was like, "Oh," and that's like next level vegan to, know your flours. And I think what you just said, Sarah, made me think of that, because one of the things I want to do is get back to the original wheat. I think it's called Icorn. I think that's original wheat in America. It's called Icorn, I believe, and you can get it from like Arrowhead Mills, things like that. But what if we were joking about like wine tasting. What if you had flour tasting? What if you had like amaranth and wheat
Bunch
and
of vegan
einkorn?
nerds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
buckwheat. And what if you knew your wheats? But I think becoming vegan, I've explored different beans, grains that I haven't tried before, and flours. So anyway,
You can also, if you're lazy, you don't like cooking, you can also make your old meals, but with the vegan options. That's also,
that's true.
substitutes. You can
Right.
do whatever you want.
Yeah, and in terms of substitutes too, like we talked about when we're baking, a lot of times for egg replacers, there's applesauce, there's arrowroot, which you can buy product, but there's also like again Arrowhead Mills. They make it actually is called egg replacer.
Yeah, I
And
get
you
that
just
one.
alternate that for like an egg. You'd put in like a tablespoon, like one egg would be 1 tablespoon of this powder you'd mix with water, and it would have the same effect in your baking.
And it's not crazy. It's like baking soda. There's like flaxseed stuff in there. It's not like super chemical.
Right.
It's not unhealthy.
It's all pretty natural.
Yeah, and it's just like yeah. You can also there's just a bunch of different things. Yeah, like you said, like you can use banana or whatever.
Right.
I make a lot of waffles, pancakes, crepes, stuff like this, and it's great with this. That works really well. This one.
Yeah.
The one that I found it works great when I bake things or a lot of other things is flax meal, which you can buy in bulk at Winco, and it's very cheap and
Right.
Very healthy.
yeah,
Whole food.
Mhm.
Yeah.
cheaper
Right.
than a lot of the other things that are marketed specifically as egg replacers.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Also, it's probably better in packaging as well.
Maybe. Yeah.
If you buy in bulk, it's
Oh, yeah.
probably yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So once you're done shopping and you go home and you're ready to start cooking, and like I love what Lucy just said as well. Like, we're so fortunate to be in the age where we are, where we can just Google, I feel like lasagna, or I feel like broccoli cheddar soup, or I feel like a curry, or whatever. You could just type in, search vegan, whatever, and you'll get many, many recipes that are vegan for whatever you're craving. So it really does make it a lot easier on us than, previous generations of vegans.
Right.
So do you want to talk about the kinds of recipes we like?
Yeah.
The kind of meals we often
Our go-tos,
eat?
our defaults. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about that?
So honestly, one of the things we like to do is, I guess, kind of like our take on a taco night or a burrito night. I already mentioned those kind of uncooked tortilla. I love to get. You can get those also at Rosar's, and but in a smaller pack. But you put those in a pan and heat them up on both sides. They brown up and kind of puff up, and they're really yum. And then we'll do beans and rice and obviously like lettuce and tomatoes and whatever. And then we'll roast some vegetables in the oven with some seasonings and like sweet potatoes or. And then, of course, guacamole and salsa and,
Right.
Sauces like that. Just have a big kind of burrito wrapping dinner.
Right. And it's amazing to me how it takes very little to make some amazing vegan food. Our daughter, she did work at pharmacy for a little while, and she just whips things up, sweet potatoes and roasted vegetables, and throws in these spices. And it doesn't take long, and you've got this amazing, flavorful food that's just high in nutrients and protein and all these things that.
Yeah. Speaking of pharmacy, and we'll talk about where we like to dine out in a couple minutes, but pharmacy really did inspire me, even in terms of how I cook at home, because you put some greens and some grains and some fresh produce and maybe some roasted vegetables or crispy tofu or roasted mushrooms or whatever, some dressings, some seeds. I mean, it's really a step up from what a lot of us were brought up thinking a salad is. It's a completely different thing than the iceberg lettuce with a tomato or something. Like this is a very flavorful, satisfying, fulfilling, delicious, nutritious meal. And we can kind of get into, again, it's when you're used to eating a heavy meat-based, dairy-based diet, like lots of times when you're done eating, you feel heavy, you feel uncomfortable, you feel hot, and as you get more and more used to eating vegan, that changes. And you start noticing that when you're eating these whole, nutritious, lots of produce, you feel very satisfied, but you feel very energized. And that heaviness isn't really something that you experience.
Right.
You don't have like a crash afterwards. Yeah.
Right. And should I even bring this up? You ever heard of the meat sweats? You guys ever heard of the meat sweats? Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know, me too. You don't get the meat sweats when you eat vegan food. You don't. And some people look at you like, what are the meat sweats? But some people know what the meat sweats are.
I mean, I don't know. I was a child when I last ate it. But
yeah, you don't get the meat sweats after a vegan meal. Anyway.
Yeah.
I like that idea you're talking about, like the pharmacy meal. Most of the times when I'm preparing a meal, I'll just focus on different food groups. I'll make a grain like rice or buckwheat. I'll make something that has protein in it, like lentils or chickpeas or tofu or something like that. And then I'll have some fruits and vegetables. And that's just a simple way to build a pretty healthy meal.
Yeah.
I used to do that for years, but my husband was kind of sick of it. So I have a bunch of ideas that I rotate all the time, and I'm really happy now that I have variety a little bit. Actually, I have oatmeal every day, and I put a fruit in it, and like seeds and cinnamon and ginger is fantastic. Anyways, apart from that, like all these things obviously are pretty easy to veganize, but I make risotto, I make mac and cheese, lentil curry, spaghetti, chili, I make toast a lot, soups, garlic pasta, pancakes, waffles, crepes, like I mentioned. You can do anything you want, really.
Right, you can.
It's all about your level of laziness, I think.
Right.
But
I agree
yeah,
with
and
that.
I'm someone who doesn't like to cook, so coming from me saying that this is easy, it means a lot.
Yeah. No, totally. I think it's true. You can basically make anything, and more we're seeing that, like world-class chefs making vegan food. That's amazing. And I think that just reminds me. I don't know if we want to get into the dining out yet, but
Well, maybe this is, if I could transition
Sure.
into the dining out. The awesome thing is that, a lot of the continent of Asia has been way ahead of us on vegan meals, probably for hundreds of years, right? Because they've been using coconut milk in their cooking forever. And the reason I think this transitions nicely into dining out is wherever we go, if we're traveling or whatever, we know that most likely if you go to a Thai restaurant or a Vietnamese restaurant or an Indian restaurant, they're gonna have they're ready to serve the vegan customer already.
right. Well, I think too that has to do with their cultures too, right? Buddhists. I think a lot of Buddhists and Hindus
as well, yeah.
Yeah, some Hindus are vegetarian, but I think a lot of Buddhists are vegan, and they're used to that. So, yeah. So it's just nice. It is nice. You're right. When you can go in there, you just know, hey, can I get this vegan? They're like, oh yeah, and here are some options. So
yeah, they already have the tofu ready to
Right.
go. Yeah.
And if you don't like tofu, you don't have to eat tofu as a vegan, by the way.
yeah,
It's just the most vegans like it, because I feel like a lot of people don't like tofu because they actually don't really know how to cook it. Well, like tofu is like bread or flour. You need to really it doesn't necessarily have flavor on its own. It's more like a texture. I mean, honestly, I only just put it in a frying pan with olive oil and maybe a little salt or something, and it's fantastic to me. But you don't, and if you don't like it, it's not a prerequisite to being vegan, which I think a lot of people think for some reason.
yeah. Well, I think the nice thing about tofu is that whatever seasoning you put with it, it kind of takes on that flavor, right? It absorbs it. So you can really do a lot with tofu. It's so versatile, and it's just got the protein. It's got the nutrients that we require.
So where do we like to eat when we dine out?
My first choice is always pharmacy. It's just nice to have a restaurant where you don't have to worry about whether they know what the word vegan means or whether
Right.
they have any vegan options. Pharmacy is completely vegan, which
So awesome.
Yeah.
I just love.
Well, how many of us, like the Vegans of Bozeman people come to our potluck? I mean, remember, everyone knows pharmacy and everyone loves pharmacy. And pharmacy, if you're listening, we love you. And but I mean, remember they took a hiatus and now they just reopened, and it's just everyone's so excited because it's such a great place.
At a new location on Main Street.
Yeah.
Much closer to town. which is
Much
nice.
closer, yeah. And they have, and not only do they have like these amazing salads that'll blow your mind, and if you've never been to pharmacy, you should check it out. And I think you'd be pleasantly surprised if like how filling their salads are. But you know, they make pastries, right? You can get Pop-Tarts. No, not anymore.
Currently, I haven't seen any pastries
Okay.
there yet.
But the previous location, there
Yeah.
were quite a few, and they were really amazing. So
There are a couple other vegan restaurants in Montana that are incredible. There's one in Missoula called Vera's.
Oh, yeah.
It started as a donut shop, but they have hot food now as well.
oh yeah.
Every time I go to Missoula, that's where I want to eat at.
Yeah,
Well,
we all had some donuts recently.
yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
My husband has been waiting for vegan donuts for 10 years as a vegan. And he told me that they were like, he doesn't remember eating donuts that were as good as these
Right.
donuts, and they are vegan.
Well, and that's the thing. That's what I was going to bring up when I was earlier. Is that if you have if you have a Vera donut from Missoula, you wouldn't know it's vegan.
Everything changes from that moment
You
on.
don't know it's vegan. There's no way you would know it was vegan. Like if, just from the taste and the texture, it's a legitimate donut. And they also have this breakfast sandwich that I think would blow your mind. There's no way. If it's vegan, it surprises me. It is so delicious and amazing.
But they are vegan.
They are vegan,
Yes.
but
Well, talking about that, Fromage has started making donuts and other things apart from
Yeah.
cheese, vegan cheese. And they're in Bozeman. They're at the farmer's market.
Yeah.
Usually you can find them.
fromage is awesome. They also have a Parmesan cheese that is made out of sunflowers, I believe, and it's pretty amazing. Put it on anything, it's fantastic. And just to speak about fromage, I mean, it's amazing what she's doing. Peg Schaefer is doing there. She makes all these different kinds of cheeses, like brie you name it, she's made it. I mean, she makes other things, and they're just all amazing. I mean, it's the variety of what she's doing with cheeses will blow your mind, and it just tastes amazing. So, yeah, the farmers market, the winter farmers market, you can check out fromage.
I also want to give a shout out to Nova Cafe
Oh, yeah.
on Main Street in Bozeman. Breakfast at a diner is probably, just that meal is the most animal product intensive meal of the day, I think, when you're eating at restaurants. I mean,
Yeah, brunch, right? Because you got
the
eggs
ham
and the eggs and the bacon,
and
milk.
yeah, yes.
What?
So
No, it's crazy.
It
Yeah.
So
is.
the fact that Nova is a breakfast restaurant and they have their separate vegan menu.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I haven't even checked
Oh,
that out.
we
yet.
gotta. You gotta go to Nova.
They have a separate vegan menu with many different wonderful items on it. I want to say I'm proud of them. I just so happy.
It's amazing. They have this one hash bowl. They have these hash bowls, and there's one that's called the Forbidden Hash. It is unbelievable. Oh my god,
Yeah.
it is unreal. Love it. Nova, good job.
I have I often go to Pizza and Red Tractor Pizza and
yeah.
also Whistle Pig.
Oh yeah,
Oh man, they're amazing. And also Five on Black is good. It's a
Mhm.
Brazilian place.
yeah, that's
downtown.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chipotle along the same lines. You can eat.
And also, so many pizza places in town are making vegan. They're having vegan cheese. I mean, a lot of them. I mean, we go to Cosmic. We go to Red Tractor. I mean, those are our go-tos, but all the other ones too. I think Rosa's will put vegan cheese on. I think what's the Italian place right there near the university?
Columbo's?
Columbo's, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Columbo's,
does.
yeah. They'll do vegan cheese. A lot of places will.
Yeah,
So
Papa Murphy's Take
Papa
and Bake
Murphy's, yeah.
has vegan
And
cheese.
most coffee shops will have oat milk or sometimes like almond milk, whatever.
Right.
So you can always make sure they're.
Like Cafe M, I think they always have vegan baked goods.
Right. Well, same for the Daily. The Daily, they make
yeah,
a
maybe.
ton of vegan.
Maybe it's the Daily, I mean.
Yeah, the Daily makes
Yeah.
a ton of vegan cakes and pastries, and then they also a lot of other coffee shops in town buy from the Daily. Just to
Also, the Co-op has an amazing vegan chocolate
yeah.
cake. Oh my god! And I always get it. And also, it's nice because it's in a compostable packaging thing, so
Yeah.
it's really cool.
Very nice.
And then we also, Bozeman's very proud to have the Starseed food truck, which is available during the summertime at the farmers market and other places. And they have all vegan food.
Right.
Still operational? I think I heard that
Yes,
one.
I saw that they hired a chef.
Oh, nice.
I don't remember his name, but yeah, I think he was raised by a vegan or vegetarian mom, so he feels like he's very comfortable with,
Nice.
with
I can't
their
wait.
mission.
Yeah, Starseed's great. Yeah, and also like the Asian restaurants, right? Rice is such it's a go-to for us. We go to Rice a lot. Thai basil. There was that they closed, but
Masala.
saffron table.
Yes.
Saffron
Oh, they
table is
closed?
amazing. Yeah.
I
But they were
think
amazing.
Red Sugar also has like a vegan dish.
And then
Yeah.
there's several places like breweries that have vegan burgers or vegan apps or
That
pretty
is
much almost
true.
everywhere. Basically, that's
For the
moral
most
of
part,
story.
yeah. For the most part, a lot of breweries surprisingly have a lot of good vegan food.
Yeah, that's surprising.
Yeah.
what's that place Backcountry that you've been to?
Backcountry Burger.
I haven't been there.
Yeah,
but
no, they have some good vegan stuff. But Mountains Walking has some really good vegan appetizers. Yeah, you can
And
go.
there's a bunch of places in Livingston we've heard. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find a lot of great vegan food if you're heading out. I mean, it's not something I think we worry about. I think when we go out, we know we're going to find something. Even if we have to
Yeah.
eat chips and guacamole, we're going to do that.
I know, yeah. And also a good app for this is Happy Cow. Actually, it's like I think it's national. It might be international. I'm not sure, but basically you just search in the city you're in, and they'll give you a bunch of vegan restaurants and vegan options at non-vegan restaurants. So it's really handy.
Yeah.
It's
Very
an app
nice.
as well.
Yeah, I use that every time I'm going on traveling to a new city or something. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it. I think I tried it a few years ago and it didn't have really much in Bozeman. It's probably, I haven't looked at it now.
Oh,
in a
now
couple
they
years.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's pretty cool.
Excellent. So yeah, and I think one of the things we talked about was honey, and a lot of times this gets into the whole vegan ethic that vegans probably for the most part don't use honey, and the reason is it's not because the honey is you're not eating an animal when you eat honey, but it's because the bees don't make the honey for us; they make it for themselves, and we are kind of taking it from them. It's their work. It's the product of their work, and it's for them. And I don't know.
Still use and exploitation, yeah.
Yeah, it's a form of exploitation. And the thing is so many things we're going along. I think vegans, we find ourselves looking on the back of the ingredients label all the time. But I don't know how many times I'm looking for something, say in a bulk section, like a granola, and everything in there is vegan except it has honey in it.
Yeah,
And then
it's
I'm like,
very annoying.
oh darn. And the rest of it looks amazing. And I don't know how many times I've run into that where, I mean, even bread,
Yeah.
there's another one that it's constant. Like we're going through looking at it. I'm trying to think what it is. And it's got honey in it. And
But
I'm like,
thankfully, actually, more and more you can see vegan labels on products so that you don't even have to look at it. That's really nice.
all right, if they say they're vegan. Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's really cool.
Right.
Oftentimes, the products will also be labeled as plant-based, since I think sometimes vegan is in terms of marketing, sometimes it's a
Oh, yeah.
bad word that
Right.
you want on your packaging. And most of the time that those words on packaging are interchangeable.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
That is true. That is true.
And mentioning labels, it's actually also vegans don't use products as much as possible that are tested on animals. It's actually, it's a very important part of veganism. And so what we do is basically at the store, we just check that, for example, toothpaste or something like that, cosmetics, you just check Leaping Bunny certified, and that means that it's not tested on animals. Sometimes it's other labels. There's a lot of these products in the store. That's really nice. Way more than in the past.
Right.
It's really
Well,
cool.
that's awesome. So, yeah, hopefully that gives you some sense of what we do. You can always reach out to us. We have an email. It's vegansofbozeman@gmail.com. You can find us on social media.
Also, wool and leather and things like that. In terms of the vegan lifestyle, it's also animal exploitation, etc. And a lot of people, I mean, we'll get into that in the future, but it's not like it's only they only get the skin from the meat industry, etc. Like it's more of a co-industry. We'll talk about that in the future, but
Right.
I
So
think it's worth painting a distinction between buying these products new, which creates demand for these products, and getting them at the secondhand store or something like that,
Yeah.
which
Right.
doesn't necessarily create demand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about that too, and I know we're coming up on time here, but and maybe it's a topic for another discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah, what if you had something that was non-vegan, a pair of shoes that were leather, or a belt, and then you became vegan, and then the best use of that might be to still use it versus throwing it away.
and then the opposing argument is often people say, well, yeah, but then you send the message that it's okay to,
Right.
like it's like would you wear dog leather shoes?
No, I would not.
Like it's a
Right.
whole debate that's very interesting.
No, we can get into it, and
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, well, we have a vegan potluck coming up, and also an Earth Day thing that I think Lucy can tell you more about.
So the vegan potluck is on May 14th. It's in the basement of the church. It's 120 South Grand Avenue in Bozeman, and you'll see the door on the back of the church. It will be at 12:30 p.m. on May 14th, and we'll have also a free movie screening of Bold Native at 2 p.m. in the same location, same date. Also, we have an Earth Day event. So on April 22nd, we'll have a table at the Emerson. You can come check us out. We'll talk about the plant-based treaty. And we'll also have somewhat of a march downtown, and we'll have some speeches at in front of the courthouse, and we'll have signs, and we'll have costumes, and it will be great. And afterwards, we will go to pharmacy for a little after party. So please join us. We'll love to just meet you there and talk and everything.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you for joining us today. This was the Vegans of Bozeman radio show on KGVM Bozeman. And if you have any questions, you reach out to us on social media.
Yeah. YouTube, Vegans of Bozeman. You can replay this and any of our podcasts. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, same title, Vegans of Bozeman. You can contact us at vegansofbozeman@gmail.com with any questions or feedback. Would love to have emails from you. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, till next time, we'll see you later. This is Vegans of Bozeman.
Bye, everybody.